Thank you for joining me in our Widow's Grief Share. Today's talk is about making funeral arrangements. It is important to have some type of gathering to acknowledge, recognize, and mourn the death of your husband, not only for yourself, but for all those who also wish to remember your husband and to mourn with you. Sharing your grief with other people who care helps you in your healing. During the days following your husband's death, your brain is not working properly, and it is difficult for you to make any decisions. Planning a funeral is overwhelming. You're not thinking clearly, and you cannot handle any more stress on top of what you are already going through. You cannot focus, and your mind is in a fog. In order for you to cope with the trauma of your husband's death, part of your brain has had to shut down. You are simply going through the motions of living, but you are not functioning at full capacity. Even though you are not in a position to make funeral arrangements at this time, there are still decisions that you need to make. That is why you cannot handle the planning on your own. You need the help and support of others. Hopefully there are people in your life who are able to step in and help you, who are able to take over as the need arises. Your family and friends want to help, but they do not always know how they can help you. You must feel free to ask for help and to let your needs be known. Though over 60% of people feel it's important to pre-plan their funerals, only 20% do. When a loved one has made their funeral wishes known beforehand, it eases the family's burden. 6 months before my husband died, my dad passed away. My dad was a planner, and he had written out some of his wishes for his funeral years prior to his death. He went into detail as to who he wanted for pallbearers, the music and songs he wanted, and even the minister he wanted officiating. We appreciated all his pre-planning and tried to honor his wishes as much as possible. On the other hand, it can be very stressful on the family when the deceased leaves all the planning and financial arrangements to the family. My husband's brother died 9 months before my husband. He was single and had made no plans for his future. My husband and his sister were made the executors of his will and were responsible for managing all his affairs and for making funeral arrangements. It was quite difficult for them to assume all these responsibilities. My husband, like the majority of people, did not want to discuss his funeral plans. After 40 years of marriage, I knew pretty well what his wishes would be. I was fortunate in that my husband and I had a burial fund which paid for the basic funeral costs. We had previously talked about the expense of funerals, and we both agreed that it was a waste of money to spend extravagantly on a funeral. Therefore, I did not feel compelled to upgrade on his coffin, or to decorate with fancy flower arrangements, or to get an elaborate gravestone. There is no limit on how much you can spend on a funeral. You may even feel pressured into purchasing the very best for your husband as a last chance to honor him, to show respect for him, and to show how much you love him. It's easy to be swayed by this rationale at a time when you are deeply grieving your loss. However, how much you spend on your husband's funeral is not an indication of how much you loved him. Rather, it is a decision you make based on what both of you and your husband would have wanted, and based on your financial situation. Whether or not you have a large, elaborate affair or a small, intimate gathering is not what's important. What is essential is to have some type of a get-together to remember your loved one and to mourn your loss. It will give you a sense of closure, not only for yourself, but for all who attend. Remembering and honoring the life of your loved one helps you emotionally. And when others share their memories and love for your husband with you, it is encouraging to hear that your husband's life has had an impact on others and that he will always be fondly remembered. Some type of ceremony honoring your loved one is necessary to finalize his death. Then you can move on and start the grieving process. Even with the help of others, there are still many decisions you alone can make. Being involved with the planning of my dad's funeral 6 months earlier helped me in planning my husband's funeral. In the back of my mind, I was always thinking about which things I would want to include or omit, and which things I would change for my husband's funeral. My dad had on his best dressed suit in the coffin. My husband rarely wore a suit, and my children wanted him to have on a beach outfit in memory of our vacations. My husband was known for his fun and laughter. That's what people remembered most about him, and that is who we wanted to portray. I chose a laughing picture of him to display rather than a solemn one. I had thought to have a closed casket, since I had no desire to see his body again. To me, my husband did not look like himself in the end, after the cancer had taken its toll. I wanted to remember him as he was before cancer. However, there were many family members and friends who wanted a chance to see him one last time. Therefore, we decided on an open casket. I know that there are many people who find it comforting, even crucial, to see their loved one again, especially if it was a sudden death and they had no opportunity to say goodbye. The mortician prepares the face according to a picture you provide him with. The prepared body is then moved to the funeral home. A family member must view the body to make sure the likeness is accurate. My daughter offered to do that since I did not want to. My daughter noticed his hairstyle looked strange, and she asked to have it changed. She was asked to style it as she would like it. As you can imagine, it was very traumatic for her. Later she told me that she should never have gone in there alone. Make sure you have someone with you whenever you have a particularly stressful situation to deal with. Though you are trying to hold it together, you never know when something might trigger your emotions and cause you to lose control and break down. Seeing all the people who attended the funeral, who knew and loved my husband, was consoling for me. They came to show their respect for him and to give support to our family. They were grieving with us and sharing our pain. Many shared with me the good times and fond memories they had of my husband. That's what was important to me that day. Not only did I want to remember my husband, I wanted others to honor him too, to know what a great person he was, to see what a positive impact he had made on the lives of so many others. At the end of the day, it did not matter how elaborate or expensive the flowers, the coffin, the chapel, or the reception was. What did matter to me was connecting with all those people who knew and loved my husband. What did you find comforting at your husband's funeral? What was difficult? What would you change?